The NHL and fantasy hockey games are absolutely buzzing, and that's why you're tapped right back in to your daily source for fantasy hockey news and betting breakdowns, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. With the early season surprises, good and bad, let's tap in and let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, hockey heads, and welcome back inside the lab, the dynamic duo whole once again. It is the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, Hump Day edition. Shout out to the everydayers, salute, much love, and thank you for holding us down and making us your first listen every single day. We could not and would not be doing this pod without y'all, so thank you so much for all the love and support for the show. We really, really appreciate it. I know I speak for Mr. Roden on that one. On today's episode, my friends, we're getting to early season surprises, standouts, however you want to call it. We need to be taking a look. We're a week in now, Steele. Who's performing, who's underperforming, and this is obviously having impact on your ability to put together a winning squad. Today's episode, my friends, is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Mr. Roden, a couple of solo episodes this week. We got the big time bets back in the booth. We will wrap up every single episode with our betting segment, including today. Before we get there, though, I've got some names to throw your way. I'm sure you have the same. Good performances, surprising so far. Bad ones as well. Let's take a look at some players jumping off the page for the right and wrong reasons. I got some honorable mentions and a couple of players to throw around. Over to you, though, my friend. Who's catching your eye for the right and the wrong reason?
Yeah, I think we got to talk. I've got a couple of points out in the Central Division right now because there's been some good and there's been some bad and there's been some ugly in that Western Conference Central Division. I got to start with the good though. I got to talk about the Winnipeg Jets, more specifically Mark Scheifele, who's really caught my eye early on this season. You know, it hasn't been the hardest schedule for the Winnipeg Jets in their first three games, a 6-0 win against the Edmonton Oilers, and then back-to-back 2-1 wins against the Chicago Blackhawks and Minnesota Wild. So starting off with some Western Conference opponents. But Mark Scheifele's been absolutely putting on a performance right now in the first three games. 4 goals, 2 assists, 6-point total in those first 3 games. He's got 11 shots on net with 2 blocks. And he's just been absolutely spectacular for them. He's showcasing his skill set, combining strong offensive instincts with some pretty solid two-way play, if I don't say so, or if I got to add that in there as well. He's been very solid in the defensive zone, been very responsible, contributing to the team's efforts to regain puck possession. But the ability to create those scoring opportunities and scoring chances in the offensive zone. I don't know if you saw that set play from the Winnipeg Jets in that Minnesota Wild game. 2 seconds left to finish the period, and he rips it by Philip Gustafsson. So they're creating those scoring chances, some trick plays or some set plays for this Winnipeg Jets team early on in the season. But I had to show some love to Mark Scheifele and this Jets team because before the season started, I was questioning their ability to be a playoff contending team. Early on, they've been very, very good.
Hey, shout out to Scott Arniel, the new head coach, maybe throwing in a new little wrinkle to this team. I appreciate you bringing them up. This was a squad that we've had a bit of a difficult time putting our finger on in terms of where we see them landing in that division, even all the way back to last year. I think you and I have been a little bit up and down with this squad, and I think that's because of how they've performed early on in the playoffs. They have pretty solid regular seasons, and then Hellebuck just ends up looking gassed. We've covered that angle. I appreciate you talking. Mark Scheifele, for some reason, has been one of those guys, maybe because of his style of play and his tendency to sometimes go really, really cold in terms of fantasy production. At stretches, he's taken some heat. I've always been a Mark Scheifele supporter, and that's one of those situations that he has to be sometimes separated fantasy value to the quality of what he brings to the team every single night. Love it, Steele. And I also have a player on the Winnipeg Jets as well, and really appreciate you bringing up the angle that it was the Wild and Chicago Blackhawks. And the Edmonton Oilers was their first win, but that's a team that just went to Game 7 of the Cup, and they're struggling right now. I still think Connor Hellebuck needs a little bit of love. One shutout,
Yes.
9.76 save percentage, only allowing 2 goals on 83 shots against, 3 victories, obviously, as you alluded to. As somebody who both you and I can agree how important Connor Hellebuck is fantasy-wise, I needed to come on here and show a little bit of love to him because the team's been good, Scheifele's been good, and he's been good. He falls into the early season standouts on the good side of things for me.
Yeah, he's been spectacular as well. And I didn't want to, boost this Winnipeg Jets team overall, but you know how I feel about Connor Hellebuck being the fantasy hockey goaltender out there.
Right. Who knows how it shakes out in the long run for you, Winnipeg?
Debatable with Igor Shesterkin, who's been putting on a performance as well for the New York.
Go.
But overall, this Winnipeg Jets team has been very great to start off this season. Offensive, defensive, and both in the blue paint with Connor Hellebuck leading the way. So I'm really liking the Winnipeg Jets right now, even though we had some questions about what they were going to be like, but early season standout in the good way for the Winnipeg Jets. I throw it back over to you. I know you just talked about Connor Hellebuck, but I've got another team out in the Western Conference that has been very, very good, and I want to talk about some of their young players.
I appreciate that, and I'm glad that I think I know where you're leaning because I didn't actually have anyone on my list for just that reason. Let's go with that. How about I spit out 2 honorable mentions and then right back to you. Evgeny Malkin has 7 points to start this season. Yeah, it's 6 assists, but with a guy that can still bring it, and he was that veteran kind of falling down in the draft type angle. He doesn't make the list, but he makes honorable mentions, and so does Ivan Barbashev. That top line in Vegas, I spoke about them on yesterday's episode, and I wanted to show him some love. That whole line has been good. Jack Eichel, too. Same with Mark Stone. So those 2 get my honorable mentions. And then lastly, Rasmus Andersson does make the list, Steele, because, and I know it's early, but I think your boy came out here and said a couple of times that I don't know how bad Calgary's actually going to be. And I know we still both have them missing the playoffs, so I'm not going to get overly hyped up. But the Calgary Flames, Jonathan Huberdeau included, have looked pretty good. Undefeated at the time of us recording this episode. Take in Rasmus Andersson's stat line very quickly before you take it away for what I think is going to be a little Utah love. 12 block shots, 2 hits, 5 points plus 6, and he's also chipping in with offense that we didn't expect. Is it going to be prolonged? I don't know. But right now, if Rasmus Andersson is out there on the waiver wire, he's a must-add in my opinion, especially while the Flames stay hot. Don't know what you think about that, but I think he deserves some love as like a standout, surprising type early performance. Don't know if it's going to be a longevity situation here, but for now, I thought he deserved a little love.
Oh, he definitely deserves a lot of love because he's been one of those guys that sort of got overlooked and has been overlooked when Mackenzie Weegar came into the Flames organization and kind of took over that top defenseman, quarterbacking the power play, doing all those getting all those peripheral stats that I love so much. But I think Rasmus Andersson was one of those guys that really did get overlooked because when you look at what he brings to the table and what he's done over the last 3 seasons for this club, again, he's only 29 years old. From ages 25 through 27, he had 50-point season, which was his career high. Back that up with a 49-point season, then 39 points. So he was kind of going down the wrong way, but he still has that ability to provide a lot for this club right now. He gets the physicality in him with 108, or puts his body on the line with 186 blocks, 42 to 50 hits, 3 straight seasons of over 150 plus shots in the league as well. So he got overlooked a little bit when Mackenzie Weegar came into the loop or came into the front, top D pairing for this Calgary Flames team. So I love the fact that you're bringing him up. You look at this Calgary Flames team right now, like you said, they might not be as bad as we all think they are. And they've gotten some young players, Martin Pospisil, Connor Zary chipping in. You got Rasmus Andersson leading the way with 5 points and being at a +6. Jonathan Huberdeau 3 goals and 5 points. They're getting a lot right now. And then who knows what happens again when Mackenzie Weegar gets going a little bit. Nazem Kadri, again, 4 points for him. They get some other guys with Blake Coleman and Michael Backlund, their veterans, into the mix and getting some confidence with their offensive game. Yeah. But Calgary Flames, they've been a very solid team, as well as this next team in the Western Conference that I want to talk about after the break.
Appreciate that. And let me just get this in right before that break. That second line in Calgary, Zary, Backlund, and Coleman right now, really liking the look of that line, bringing a little bit of muscle along with some offensive flair from Zary. Is it going to stick? All of these are early season. Of course, that's why we're going to highlight early season, mid-season, late season, off-season, whatever it is, because it's fantasy and you can't afford to slip or slack for a single second. A lot of S's in there. Steele, another one for you. Right after the break, I'm hyped to have your take on this club. We're going to have some of the poorer surprises, poorer standout performances from the start of this year, also coming up in big time bets. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Gametime. No matter the time of year or event, you never want a stressful ticket buying experience for your next sports, music, theater, or comedy event, which is why Steele and I only use Gametime for all of our favorite events in our area. Seat views, lowest price guarantee, Gametime ticket coverage, you name it, they have your back. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. This is one of the new ones, and I'm just starting to cook on PrizePicks Steele. You know, I like sprinkling a couple of different angles, whether it's UFC, boxing, NBA upcoming, college football. You got to be tapping into PrizePicks. Look at some props. Justin Jefferson, over under receiving yards. Patrick Mahomes, over under passing yards. Make sure you're checking out the PrizePicks app. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNHL. Get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNHL. Get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's checking out PrizePicks. Download the app today.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you've been showing us Monday through Friday. Let's continue on this topic, though, of the good, the bad, the ugly, the early season standouts for the 2024-25 season. And early season standout for me, again, with a lot of other fantasy hockey fans and just hockey fans in general, is this Utah Hockey Club. They came out guns a-blazing, especially Dylan Guenther. I talked about Barrett Hayton on week 1 of the waiver wire Monday action for this upcoming week. They've got a pretty decent schedule, but it's been a very exciting start to the year for this Utah Hockey Club. Obviously, new to the city, new fan base for them. Still working out some kinks with some of the viewing areas in that arena. I don't know if you saw that, but that's pretty funny to see. But they'll work that out. But they have started off the season very hot. 3 wins so far on the year, showcasing some very strong cohesion and teamwork with their aggressive play style right now. And I think that was the big thing with this Utah Hockey Club. Obviously, they're a very young team still. You got Clayton Keller, who's 26 years old, Logan Cooley, 20, Dylan Guenther, 21, Barrett Hayton, 24, and the list goes on with Mikhail Sergachev, Nick Schmaltz, and some other guys, Matthias Maselli as well in the lineup. And again, strong season. We had them missing the playoffs, but if they can continue to get this type of play all season long from this young core right now, especially the number 1 center, Barrett Hayton, who shout out to Troy out there, who was messaging, get him on the waiver wire Monday. So I had to have him on there. Barrett Hayton, 3 goals, 5 points to start the season. Clayton Keller, 3 goals, 6 points to start the year. Dylan Guenther, 5 goals with 5 points on the season. So they've been getting some really good action recently. They're supporting one another, letting that third man kind of hang high when they enter the zone, and they've used that very well so far early on in the season. Utah Hockey Club, along with the Winnipeg Jets, they've been my standouts in the Western Conference, and they are absolutely killing it right now to start the year.
I think it would have been a miss for you and I to come on here and talk about standout surprises, early season, anything, and not bring up Utah. It's just a good story right now, and I know it's 4 games in, and they're 3-1, far from a lock for the playoffs, which I still think they miss out on. However, just so good to see, and it is a little bit unfortunate for Arizona fans who, I'm sure are still somewhat behind this team and feel like it's theirs. But for this club to switch markets, I know I'd be a little bit bitter, Steele, to see this early season success. However, what's also intriguing is Connor Ingram, the goaltending, especially him, not exactly sensational. 874 save percentage, 3.54 goals against, and I think that's just very much indicative of how good that forward group is. And I wanted to just drop this little news nugget. Sean Durzi, as of this afternoon, quote unquote, from Bill Armstrong, general manager, he's not going to be back anytime soon, end quote. So that's a little bit of a hit for Sean Durzi owners. Durzi, 2 assists in 4 games for Utah this season. Get your Mikhail Sergachev bump in because he'll be eating even more minutes. That's good news for Sergachev owners. Genther has looked sensational, Steele. That was a good one that a lot of deep fantasy cats were on. You know, I'm benefiting from a good start for Logan Cooley, and I know he's not lighting the lamp, but 5 assists. I'm happy with that production. And all of this points to what? This team is going to be really good sooner than later. And if they can tighten things up on the back end, or maybe Armstrong makes another move or two over the next season and a half, they will be in the mix for the postseason. Just far too much good talent. And thank you for bringing up Clayton Keller. The dude is nasty. And,
good.
Now that he's got that C on him, now that he's got a few years under his belt, which haven't been easy, things are starting to go better. Let's see what he can do, because I think the sky is the limit. Why don't I throw it right back over to you, though? The bad. Any ugly? Anything else you got? What else are you looking at angle-wise? Because I've got 2 players, 2 names here that make sense because they're on 2 teams very much struggling out of the gate. But who are you looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I've got 1 player and a team I want to talk about, and I'll save the team for after the break because I'll go more in depth with that one. But I just wanted to mention this one. It's not so much as bad as more is just disappointing because of the way he started last season.
Yeah, you're not mad, you're disappointed. The classic.
Yeah, exactly. Mad, I'm not mad, just disappointed with the start to the year for Auston Matthews right now. And I've been very happy, very, very happy with the play of the Toronto Maple Leafs, even with that season opener, 1-0 loss to the Montreal Canadiens. They should have won that one. Sam Montembeault stood on his head. We know that. Anthony Stolarz has been absolutely stellar in the cage. Dennis Hildeby gets his first start and first win as well of the season. So that was great to see. But Auston Matthews, 3 games into the year and 0 points. It's not so much a concern, but I mean, he started off the season last year with back-to-back hat tricks. I mean, it's a little disappointing to come into the year. And again, it's your first year as the Toronto Maple Leafs captain. I'm nitpicking right now, but Auston Matthews, 0 points in 3 games.
Sure.
I believe the Toronto Maple Leafs will be on the schedule Wednesday night.
Yeah, they play the Kings.
They're playing the LA Kings. So I'm having some big expectations at home for Auston Matthews and that core and this team that's been very good to start off the year.
Nice tease to bets. I appreciate that. I'll be talking about Auston Matthews a little bit, but I don't think it is unfair at all, Steele. I think it's completely fair to be a little bit disappointed when you score 69, and it could have been even more last year. If you even go 1 or 2 games, let alone let's not creep into 3, 4, 5 without a single tally, and you're pretty much hands down. I was saying this the other day. There's not many angles in sports where you can say, okay, top guy at this position, it's locked in. Top goal scorer, it's locked in. Auston Matthews is locked in as the top goal scorer and number 1 goal getter in fantasy hockey. So expectations are that high, and I think you're holding him to them appropriately. So I appreciate you bringing it up. Nice tease to bets. These 2 players that I'm looking at, and let me just spit out one and let's get to break and we'll keep it close. Zach Hyman was a top regression target for this season. That made sense. We didn't expect him to score 50 plus. But 0, 0, 0, 0 across the board for Mr. Hyman right now. A guy who, even though, again, you and I were very clear about being careful about how overreaching on this guy this year would be a mistake in the draft, he is still probably a top 2nd, 3rd round pick in almost every format. And for him to have 4 shots, 1 hit in 3 games and nothing else to show for it, he's got to be on the bad or surprisingly bad starts to the year. But so does that Edmonton Oilers team, and I got another player on another team off to a slow start that I'll mention quickly after the break along with bets.
It seems like the Edmonton Oilers are just trying to replicate exactly the season they had last year, and they're off to a good start if that's their plan because they are 0-3 on the season. They've been dominated almost in every single aspect of the game so far, and Zach Hyman and a lot of those other players need to get going quickly. A lot of guys that we talked about, Victor Arvidsson, Jeff Skinner, They're not cutting it right now
Bouchard.
as well. Looks like they're pairing up Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid moving forward for at least the time being to end that skid. But we'll get back after the break with some more bad and ugly so far with the early season standouts and finish this episode off with big time bets. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. That's exactly where you should go place these bets. NFL fans out there, you can start the season off big with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bet. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip and I appreciate all that love and support, and that's why we're going to show you the love later in this episode with big time bets. We're going to get some winners out there for everybody. We're going to start the season off on the right note, on the right foot, and get it going big time. That's why we call it big time bets. But first, the last bad early season standout. Flip, over to you, my friend. Who else are you looking at, or what team you're looking at?
I think it's quite simple and actually quite obvious. The Colorado Avalanche have disappointed as well. And again, one of those angles that have been accurate in terms of fantasy concern. And I know Eustace and Noonan has not come in and saved the day in his one look by any stretch. Or will that happen? We still don't know. But what is already happening is a guy in Alexander Georgiev who was, for the most part, a backup for most of his career. And yeah, it's a good team in front of him, but you still need to have a goaltender that is going to carry you at points of the season. And I'm not saying Georgiev is out the window already, but when you look at these numbers, Steele, he's gotta hit the list as surprising or standout bad performances. 0-2-0. 13 goals against. That's the most in the NHL so far, by the by. 790 save percentage and a goals against average of almost 6. Has to be discussed because he was still a very draftable goaltender on a good team. And I'm sure, and I mentioned this yesterday, if you were a player, GM, and I'm not saying that this was actually a bad angle because it might pan out for you in the long run, that invested heavily into Colorado Avalanche and Edmonton Oilers players, even a couple on each or one or two from each, you're likely have lost your first week matchup if it's a head-to-head league, or you're already a little bit behind the 8 ball. Lots of time to turn it around for both yourself and these teams, players, and etc. However, Georgiev, 13 goals in 3 games, leading the NHL in goals against. He's hitting the bad, surprising performances in a big way.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up because I know you talked about the Colorado Avalanche on yesterday's episode. I was going to have him on this episode as well, but I figured, like you said, pretty obvious. You talked about him yesterday. And it's not like this Colorado Avalanche team has been very bad themselves. It's just Georgiev has been completely letting them down. I mean, poor decision-making, poor positioning in the crease, and just has not been even close to what the standard of goaltending that this club needs right now as they are a Stanley Cup contender. I mean, just to throwing this out there, they could be making a trade soon. They could be, Ville Husso was just put on waivers from the Detroit Red Wings, so maybe they go out and pick him up off waivers. Who knows?
Ooh,
but yeah, it could be an interesting factor moving forward if nothing solidifies with both their goaltenders, Eustace and Noonan and Alexander Georgiev. Real quickly, my last bad, my ugly for the season so far. I told you I was going back to that Central Division, the Western Conference. Very disappointed again with this Nashville Predators team. I know it's only been 2 games. But still, 4-3 loss to the Dallas Stars in their season opener, a 3-0 loss to the Detroit Red Wings on the road. They now go back home for a 4-game homestand. Again, playing, pretty decent schedule. Seattle Kraken yesterday, Edmonton Oilers, and the Detroit Red Wings once again. So fairly disappointed with the start for, some of these guys we talked about. Roman Josi, only 1 point again, only 2 games in. It's hard to nitpick right now because it's only 2 games, but Steven Stamkos, 0 points, -1. He's getting those opportunities, but hasn't done anything really offensively. Had to just nitpick a little bit on this one. Nashville Predators, because you know how high I'm high on them this season. Dark horse for sure in the Western Conference. So I got to mention the Nashville Predators. But let's get over to big time bets. Let's end this on a positive note.
Let's try.
Bad, not the ugly. Let's end this on the good, the great of big time bets. Over to you, my friend. 4 games, I believe, on the schedule for Wednesday night. And I know we alluded to the Maple Leafs and Kings, so maybe you want to start there. Maybe you want to start in one of those other games. Let's start there. Maple Leafs, Kings. What are you looking at?
Wonderful little segue, Mr. Rodin. Last season, 69 goals for Mr. Matthews. Very well documented. Perhaps what's not as well documented as the man did not go more than 4 games all season long without scoring and scoring multiple goals. So 3 or 4 games is basically the longest he really goes in his career without popping one. He's hit a couple of bars. He's hit a couple of posts. And yeah, it's got to go in the net, and I still am backing you on. It's a little bit disappointing. It's a little bit concerning, most definitely, because I'll still stand by. This team will go as far as 34 carries it. That's not a bold or a brash take. It's a fact. However, in his career against the Los Angeles Kings, the numbers don't exactly jump off the page, but I got him anyway. 13 career regular season games for Poppy, 5 goals, 5 assists for 10 points. He's going to break out, Steele. He's busting out in this one. Give me Poppy. Anytime goal against the LA Kings, who, look, Drew Doughty wasn't the be-all and end-all to their season, but he is so critical to their blue line success. I know Darcy Kemper has looked pretty solid, and I actually like him as a goaltender, but him and David Riddick, I'm not going to ride home on at all. At all. So I'm going to ride with Poppy, 34 to break out here. I'm going to call at least 2 points in this one. At least a goal. I'd be fine with more than that. But hit me with Auston Matthews anytime goal, his first of the season. Why not ride with it at home against the Kings?
Yeah, I mean, Kemper looked good up until that game against the Ottawa Senators. I mean, what an absolute chaotic game. I mean, 8-7 overtime win for the Ottawa Senators. I mean, both goalies couldn't stop a beach ball in that one. So I like the Auston Matthews pick. I'm going to add that to the parlay or on a single bet as well. I'll start off with this one. I've got Sidney Crosby anytime goal against the Buffalo Sabres. 59 games. Let me just make sure this is correct. 59 games against the Buffalo Sabres.
Oh, I got it.
28 goals, 54 assists for Sid the Kid. So he has 0 goals on the season so far. He's got 4 assists, I believe, on the year. But I think he's going to bury one against this Buffalo Sabres team. He's gotten some opportunities. He's setting up his teammates right now. But I think this is going to be a massive night, a high-scoring game for both in this matchup. So I've got Sidney Crosby anytime goal. I think you could also do 2+ points for Crosby if you want to spice it up a little bit. But I'm going with the anytime goal from Sid the Kid. That's my first pick of the night. I'm just going to end it with these 2 picks, and I'll throw it back over to you. I am jumping on the Auston Matthews, but it wasn't one of my 3 picks. I've got the Leafs money line at -164 against the LA Kings. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10 games. They've looked so good defensively to start this season. I know they played the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Montreal Canadiens. Again, 2-1 on the season so far. Great start for me. I've loved what I've watched. Anthony Stolarz has been great. Leafs money line -164. My lock of the night, the Utah Hockey Club -130 against the Anaheim Ducks on the road in Anaheim. They've just been so spectacular so far this season. I loved everything that I've seen from Logan Cooley, really becoming a playmaker at such a young age that they really need right now. It can't just be Clayton Keller. He's getting it done, and Dylan Guenther, the goal scorer. So it's a match made in heaven with those two. So Utah Hockey Club -130 lock of the night.
It's the segue special because I'm taking a look at that Utah-Anaheim game as well, Steele, but from a different angle. I see 2 very good, young, potent offensive clubs. I see 2 teams that on the back end are still working things out, and I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. Let's go with the over, and I'm going to tease it down to cop out a little bit just because of I want to win, and I know the odds won't be there, but I'm taking it down to 5.5. You can tease it anywhere you like these days, but I'm taking it over at 5.5. The Utah Hockey Club, first game, 7 total goals. Second game, 9 total goals. Third game, 11 total goals. All of them going over the number. And yeah, they got shut out against Jersey. That's going to happen. Markstrom is that kind of guy. Led the league in shutouts a couple of years back with, I believe, 9 of them. So that's going to happen. But so are high-scoring games between 2 young clubs loaded with offensive talent, and that's where I'm looking at tonight. Anaheim at home to Utah. Hit me with the over 5.5. And you already teed it up and segued it nicely for me with my favorite bet on this podcast, Say it with me, Mr. Roden. The Sidney Crosby
Anytime
assist.
There we go,
Bang.
baby.
And you already reamed off his career numbers against the Sabres. 59 career regular season games, 54 regular season assists for Sid, and 82 points. He feasts on most clubs, but none more so nearly as much as the Sabres. He also has 5 career regular season game-winning goals. Sidney Crosby is that guy for me. He's my lock of the night. Anytime assists against the Sabres, who have once again come out of the gate a little sloppy jalopy and a little slowly. So let's go with Sid the Kid. Anytime assist, that's my lock of the night.
Yeah, they're fighting some internal battles as well. I don't know if everyone saw that little scuffle between Payne Krebs and Rasmus Andersson. I know they came out and they apologized to each other. They talked to the media, but still, early season battles internally for this club right now. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. For your second listen, go check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. You can find the link in the description below, so you don't have to search for it. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Once again, from Flip and I, we wish you good luck with your bets tonight. We're coming in hot to start off the season. Make sure you're tuning in for tomorrow's episode. Have a good night.
Peace.